Hi, everyone. I am Leah Hines, Executive Director of the Charleston Library Conference, and I would like to welcome all of you to today's webinar, Audiobook Trends, Growing Role in Higher Ed Curriculum, and it's sponsored by Recorded Books. Thanks all of you for joining us here today. I'm really excited you're here with us. Today's presenter will be Brad Gray. He's Senior Solutions Engineer at Recorded Books. And in that role, he works with libraries worldwide to help them improve the patron experience when accessing digital content. Thanks for being here today, Brad. And thank all of you. Thank all of you for attending. As usual with webinars, you'll be on mute, so we won't be able to hear you talk. But if you have questions that come up during the presentation, you can use the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. We'll save those questions till the end of the webinar, but just as things come into your mind, feel free to go ahead and enter those questions using that Q&A box. I'll also be monitoring the attendee chat, so if you have questions, you can put some, if you're having audio issues or connection issues of any kind, you can contact me there and I'll help you work through those as best I can. A webinar, a handout will be included for the follow-up, as well as a link to the recording of this webinar, so we'll have all of that available. The recording will be posted on the Charleston Conference website, along with a copy of the slides and the handout. If you would like to speak with a Recorded Books team member about anything you hear today, you can just type "meeting requested" in the questions box or the attendee chat, and a team member will be in touch with you very shortly. Thanks again for all of you for being here today, and with that, I'm going to turn it over to Brad.
All right, thank you, Leah, and welcome everybody. Thanks for spending time with me today. Look forward to giving you some interesting insight related to the higher education industry in relation to digital media, specifically audiobooks and the digital content that seems to be transforming how individuals look at their educational materials, both that are primary text and there's also secondary text and supplemental, all different things that helps the students enrich their educational experience. It's dramatically changed, and so that's what we're going to go over through today. So if I can share some of that information to you, I'll consider this a success, as well as introduce you to RB Digital specifically on how we reach out and serve that kind of need in the higher education space. We're going to talk about the challenges and opportunities that libraries and educational classrooms face in a higher education setting, and the importance of that all-important cost per circulation, which is the bellwether, if you will, of how much money and energy is spent on these digital content items, and then how much usage you get, and that balance, and then how the kind of experiences affect that amongst the students and the staff that use the services. And then I'll introduce RB Digital and RB Digital Higher Education, our unlimited collection as well. One of the big things to get things started with any particular collection is the role of popularity and use of digital media. And specifically, we're going to be talking about like audiobook trends and then just audio listening of the, audio consumption of literacy materials, entertainment materials, curriculum materials. In short, it's really, really growing. In the U.S. audiobook market, it's growing up in double digits every year, 20+% year over year over year in just pure usage, as well as the amount of actual people in that targeted educational range, from the high school students that are just growing up with that digital acumen, if you will, and as they move into their college years or higher education years, it has just become a natural part of their life. And so that just this year, it is, the surveys are showing that more and more and more, basically half of all of the students in that higher education range, either current or emerging into higher education, are used to listening to audiobooks and other kinds of digital media as a primary way of getting what had traditionally been printed material. One thing that's interesting also is that the demand continues to grow. The demand amongst all academic libraries has increased over time, as well as the interest in the formats that are most interesting to higher education that actually have always been in higher education settings, but not in a digital format or affordably in a digital format. So obviously, I think we all can agree that books have been the primary stay of all higher education settings from the beginning of time. But then audiobooks as a medium, as well as the digital version of audiobooks, is growing. The digital audiobook industry is about 40 years old. We actually are a pioneer of it. We're in our 40th year at Recorded Books as a premier publisher of audiobook material, and we've seen an incredible growth in demand and just depth and breadth across the full publishing industry to adopt audiobooks as a viable and necessary part of all of book publishing, if you will. The second is streaming video. You know, streaming video is essential to learning these days, and we have an opportunity for that as well. But, you know, the traditional video snippets that you crank up the VCR, now more in the last 20-some years, it's all been DVDs and so on, and then slices from the internet and so on. But the offering it as a standard part of education is growing as well. So it's a really great area, and that's what the demand is leading us to amongst the industry that provide these materials to you, is showing us the top two areas. This just reinforces this area here, the incredible demand that's needed and the growth of that area across all the generation gaps. You know, the area of the Gen Zs and today's students, that those, you know, emerging students that are coming into college and higher education settings, as well as those that are already there. And then the primary focus have digital media as what they've grown up with. You know, I personally am old enough to have been part of that initial transition from only print to print with some audio, print with some video, to mostly digital, and then all the different ways that students acquire primary textbook material and the way the professors has transformed what they're providing to the students. It's just incredibly changed, and it's somewhat related to the population and how people are looking for and demanding use for those particular areas. Like, for example, when I was in school, it was forbidden for me to have a computer or a phone open during my education years. Now, I don't know how a student can get along without some sort of technology right at the ready during a lecture or an open forum in any kind of higher education settings. The question always comes up when we talk about digital media is relation to why are audiobooks growing and how do they compare with other formats? It's really interesting how information is retained these days. You know, we've all heard the idea that if you hear something and you don't put it into practice right away, literally it's always gone. It's always forgotten. However, and it's the same with reading. If you're not reading, some people are just good at just retaining it. Most aren't. They have to take notes or they have to hear it in a feedback setting as well. And narration really is a great example of that, of how listening to a narration, particularly in nonfiction material, it's remarkable how memorable that is and how entertaining it can be. Typically dry or less exciting, entertaining fiction material is what nonfiction really is in the end. But narrations, professional narrators, really engage that learner and allows that memory to kind of become more permanent, more sticky memory, as some like to say. Some students are very much auditory-based learners. They learn better in an interactive setting. They like to listen and comprehend better. Dyslexic students and others that have challenges with the traditional reading formats really respond well to narration as well. And also in some settings, particularly when you're dealing with fiction items, the narration is often contextualized. The material in the narration is so often in the dialect of that particular setting. So it just adds just a total added value to the standard information that's presented in that particular book. Many students nowadays are not pure readers. They're used to summaries, they're using the cheat sheets, or they're both ands. You know, they'll read some, they'll listen to some. That's a traditional institutional listener in all the various models that we have nowadays in our world, at our public library life, our school life, our high ed life, our corporate life. We all have that need to acquire the information, and we're very adept typically to getting that same information in multiple ways and then retaining it together. Audiobooks are also a great way for those busy students to find time to learn. They don't have that dedicated learning time like we used to, the infamous study hall, or I'm going to go to the library and find a study carrel and study and learn from there. They need to do it in their busy life, whether commuting to class, they're going from class to an athletic practice, or before orchestra practice, whatever, or when they can find time. So audiobooks is a great way for commuting. And as commuting continues to grow, particularly in higher education settings that are much more amenable to non-traditional full-time students, it really draws audiobooks in really well. They're also less expensive, almost without exception. They're less costly up front than the hard copy book. They're easier to manage. There's a less level of effort for the institution to just literally manage them that are offered to the library, with the expense of damage, expense of theft, the expense of just loss, slippage, as they say. It just provides a really great utility for that to be able to have. And when they're digital, they're immediately available to wherever it is, and it provides that a natural extension for that particular student. So the next section that we're going to talk about now is the bulk of the presentation. It's to introduce you to the 5 ways that this digital content, this audiobook content, integrates primarily into coursework. So a lot of this information that you'll learn in the next several slides is an extension of what you already know. You already have a foundation for what that information is that's provided by the professor or the subject matter expert instructor, and it extends to the audiobook platform. So it's not just the one and done, just the print book, got to get it from the bookstore kind of model. Now they can get the audiobook from the bookstore, they can get it from the library, they can get it from, you know, big collections and so on. And so that's what we're going to cover in the next several sections, to kind of bridge that industry experience into this audiobook environment, and it's specifically into the digital environment. We're going to start with how audiobooks dramatically integrate into coursework. Core texts are still the primary way individual students learn. The professor teaches from it. It's either it's like a flip situation where there's video and learning that the student does outside of the classroom, and then they come to the classroom for a lecture and or a conversation about the material, or they're doing it in class. Core textbooks is still primary. English professors assign a complete audiobook typically, and then it allows that student to find it, get it, consume it in that same unabridged environment that they're used to. It's the exact same material. It's professionally narrated and performed, and classics are just the natural example of what's available. But there's just thousands and thousands of materials available in this type of format. They're typically narrated by talented actors, and I already mentioned how they use the accents and so on to help improve that engagement and contextualize the where that information was and the theme of that particular author is trying to convey in that material, whether it's classic material or the modern classic. Another way is when a business course or a non-traditional humanities course assigns reading material in addition to that primary way that they're disseminating that economic theory or business theory, or in this case we have some examples of like risk management or math or a political science kind of discourse. It's a great way to introduce that topic across a number of different topics that for most students somewhat are mundane, or the necessary foundational or rubric type pillar courses that you need to have to get that base learning under your belt in order to deal with the more advanced courses as well. It's just a great way to do the both and of that kind of primary course material. And the audiobook industry is just loaded with these kinds of non-fictional materials, and that it's really encouraged to give that an option within that non-traditional humanities type of set, like in the case of business or mathematics or political science. Research material is also a primary way that students get engaged in with audiobooks. It's interesting how the old research model from a few decades ago, where you went to the library and you got the research material and you did all the research right where it is. Now they're engaging with the library, with the extension of this, in general, with their higher education institution. They get that information in a wide variety of ways and where they are. Again, in all of those things I mentioned earlier about when they want to find the material is when they can find time to do that. They need to have primary source information that they can reference. They need to be able to apply that to the other aspects of the education that they're working from. So the research material bridges even an additional gap between the traditional foundational learning style to what today's modern tech-oriented or digital-centric student is looking for. Perfect examples is how, general wide-ranging subjects about how people do stuff, the 7 habits of motivation, risk, reward, different things that kind of help group that member together and help summarize what they're listening in that audiobook format. It helps speed things up. They can jump right to it. They can listen to playback easier enough. It's almost like visual notes and stuff like that that they can listen to and bookmark things and come back to when they're remembering what it is. Because it's just the typical psychology is that if you hear it, while you're listening to it or watching it or reading it, it's going to just have better retention. So it's just an outstanding way to balance all those things out with your primary text, to use that in a research setting. Background reading material, this is just like what, when I was growing up and when I was in school, it was the infamously called supplementary textbook, which was code that I shouldn't buy it or I should buy it, but we're going to read parts of the book and so on. The beautiful thing about audiobooks is that it allows that background reading in a wide variety of subject matter. Here's just some examples of the government type classes. So you just showed you a wide breadth that they can then take chapters and summarize, and then the professor can knit these stuff together along with the traditional print materials, and they can use it as a foundational primary background for their particular coursework that's provided in addition to that primary textbook material, that foundational material, that research material. Here's a supplemental that kind of shapes that all together and so on. General development skills is the foundation of nonfiction. I think the majority of audiobook in listening to nonfiction audiobooks started when it came with skill development, professional and personal development, how it applies to psychology and sociology and self-help and all the different aspects and in industrial type of courses like economics and power theories and work theory and culture clashes and labor relations and science and all those different areas that people have foundational for their skills development in addition to those primary things that they work on within the environment of higher education. The primary stuff, they've got the research stuff, they've got the supplemental stuff, but then they have that skill foundational stuff. It all kind of works together in how things are assigned, and it has, up to this point, been very difficult to apply all of that in a higher educational setting. So we've covered those 5 different areas that are primary is to just provide an opportunity to extend that traditional work into that more unlimited life of higher education. The demand that digitally conscious, that highly acumen-based student is looking for these days and what they expect, and more of the savvy professors are incorporating that mixed format in their education because it rounds out the education. A challenge for an institution is to how to provide that material in a comprehensive way and an economic way to the largest landscape possible at your institution. One of the things that we do at Recorded Books is that we offer that through a consolidated platform and app kind of experience. We call that RB Digital, and we've offered and ganged up a bunch of material that we call the Unlimited Higher Education Collection, the Higher Education Audiobook Collection. We're going to talk about that for the next few minutes before we get into the general questions that have come in and so on. One of the things that is important when you're looking to explore adding audiobooks, particularly in an aggregated collection, is the breadth of the collection. Does it cover the basic pillars within your institution? And how is the information discoverable and then ultimately consumed by the student and the staff and the professors that would be engaging with that material? RB Digital does this in a way that we offer this very sizable, unlimited collection of proprietary audiobooks that we have published in audiobook format across the full spectrum of subject matters, that in partnership with the print publisher from all the major publishing brands. You name the publishing brand, we work with them. We have hundreds of partners in global publishing and all the key categories that we bring together under one of our 5 audiobook brands that RB Digital is part of, to offer over 30 categories of highly, highly valuable curriculum content. There's over 15,000 audiobooks available that are specifically formatted in our large, extensive collection. And all of our collections are in a very unique consumption format. They're all unlimited. They're always available. We have the technology that makes those particular books unlimited, all access, meaning that they're always available to all students all the time. So that professor that would be assigned let's say a cultural studies, let's say you're doing a women's studies course or a political science course or a biology course or a current events course, they can assign that book and knowing that it's in this collection, that all their students are going to be able to have access to that same audiobook simultaneously all at the same time. And so it doesn't have that complexity of making sure they've ordered enough books, the students actually get the books, and the library or the division or the department can actually afford the books, or they're not working off the same edition of the books. The digital audio in this unlimited solves all of that in a very nice way. And in addition, as new publishing comes out, we keep adding to the group. You certainly can add books from other areas as well as you need this, specialty books from other publishers that are not from us specifically, but we by far have the largest nonfiction collection, and we're the only ones that offer it in an unlimited experience. One of the things about our unlimited experience, there's a couple little factoids that are interesting to cover all the time. And in those situations is that it's no holds. I think any higher education institution that's used to offering digital media knows the pain of holds. If you carry ebooks of any level, you know what that is. That means that however many copies of a particular title you have in the collection, that's how many individuals can at one time have that book checked out. So there's in some cases, there's a hold. So one of the problems of that is the experience is the area is, all right. Yeah, I lost access to your screen. If you have something happen on your particular screen.
Is that working now?
Yes.
Are you able to advance the slides? I'm sorry about that. I don't know what happened.
All right. I'm just viewing your screen now. I don't have the access. There we go.
Should be able to.
Sorry about that, everybody.
Got it? Yep. Sorry about that.
Sure. Okay, so sorry about that. Here, I'm just going to click back and then click forward. Okay, we're all back on the block here. So what I was starting to talk about was the hold pain that a lot of libraries and a lot of departments and institutions have faced when they've reached the experience of, with ebooks primarily, that there's just a lot of demand for for a smaller collection of books that everybody wants at one time. So there has been some hesitancy to assign them in that respect, simply because of that model of providing that transactional model. That's not the case with these unlimited audiobook collections. It's that everyone has access to them all at one time. It's everyone has a premier checkout experience. Many of the titles in the audiobooks, not only are they exclusively available on Unlimited, they may only be available from us. So because we're such a large audiobook provider, if this is an interesting subject for you to explore the audiobook side of your educational experience, it's very likely that we work with the print publisher of those textbooks. And so we can put that together in a nice package. And we've done that with our exclusive content that's only available to us, and it's certainly only available in an unlimited format. The collections themselves are annual subscriptions, so that you as an institution, based on how many students you want to have available to that particular collection, you pay a single annual rate based on when you wanted to start and end it, and then that's it. We add titles throughout the year to the collections, and then you just would enjoy getting those additive titles to the availability from what can be chosen, and it doesn't cost any more for you. It's just part of the value of working with an annual subscription in this unlimited surprise environment. One of the big benefits of it is that we have the lowest potential cost per circulation, because the more people that can see the more books, more time, more chances of more checkouts, which just by nature betters the value. More and more kind of add up to a better value. So the organization of putting all this together onto that one app experience of RB Digital offers you that level of higher curriculum experience. We also have a large collection of popular interest items as well to accentuate that curriculum experience across popular books. We have magazines and video and other additional educational materials as well, like language learning and so on, that supplement that curriculum audiobook place. But the primary focus to get the most experience and the most value in this kind of digital experience is definitely in the unlimited audiobook experience. This is just another way of looking at a couple of the items that go across the different books that are typically taught in institutions across English and economic courses. It just shows a wide variety of the different books that we have available. And again, there's 30 categories across a bunch of different subject categories, and I'll just flip through a couple of these here. I had mentioned that RB Digital is not just audiobooks. We also have a wide variety of other categories that make sense for a number of different higher education settings, both on the direct education side as well as the entertainment and wellness factor of these students. There are strong studies that a well-balanced student is also a better student, and so providing a lot of those different things again in their digital life, basically putting all those materials within their hand. We have a number of different solutions that could help in that kind of aspect of their broadening health and education while they're in your educational institution. We also are professionals at ongoing content curation. We know that every institution has a balance. Every professor has its own thoughts of how they're going to take their particular course forward. In my experience in working with the content people within the library on the textbook side, as well as just the general interest side, as well as the boutique departments and specialty areas and graduate programs and medical schools, all that, it's very difficult sometimes to find and source some of these great materials that these educators want. We have a lot of utilities to help you with that, particularly on the audiobook side, to help you make that simple and keep abreast of what's new and forthcoming and coming out. So if you're suggesting things back, to those other areas, we can help you with those things as well. And our account management team are just plain content experts. They're all bookie people, and they're all oriented to how to best manage the new developments in publishing with the technology and find the right balance for you, as well as what purchase to be able to do. The actual use of our product also works. So there's a lot of things you build on about the program to just know if you're going to partner with someone like us in the industry. One, does the content itself make sense? Does the breadth of that content be meaningful? Does the discovery and the assistance to help you have the best chance that students find the material, have a good experience doing that is actually the key. And we've done that with our apps. We have most of our consumption of our materials is done through a digital app, simply because that's where students find the material, and that's how they want to get the material. And we have a very high rating within the industry, and we have apps that for all the iOS Apple uses and all the Android and all the varieties of those devices to very easily find and get an account and all the different uses and stuff like that, and the personalization tools that are built in. So we're pretty pleased with the way that app rating has worked out, because that's like the proof of all these things we've talked about before. It actually has worked because these are actual users rating it rather than us telling you that it's great. The content is great. People are telling us that it's great. We have institutions from around North America using our services now, and have been for a long period of time, at all different sizes and shapes and focuses of their educational institutions. So you can see here is just a short listing of some of those participants, and they have lots of different needs and different things. So we have since we're a pretty large business and a lot of different diverse solutions available, we're really pleased to be able to offer that throughout the education spectrum. We also serve the typical two-year institution that has a lot of commuters. So literally the early uptick, the early adopters to a more of a digital curriculum kind of focus has been those two-year institutions, and it's not surprising to us in the business, because it's very similar to how the commuting traffic works, that people are much more adept to consuming that kind of information and gaining that knowledge while they're commuting to the campus, because they're not permanent residents of the campus. They're coming in. They might have full-time jobs, but they're supplementing their work with bettering themselves educationally, or they're setting the baseline for education to get that 2-year and then move on to a 4-year institution or a certification. There's just so many different varieties here. The two-year industry is a perfect example of this in action and how well it's worked with digital content. One thing also, once you have something that actually works for you, the content shift to digital, that we have a breadth that makes sense, the actual applications the students face works, how is the provider going to help you to make your life easier? Making your life easier is also important, and we do that through a number of different ways with digital marketing materials. We provide training for both you and the frontline, like teacher, professor, as well as the students if they needed it. There's a lot of different things that we offer, and we offer a lot of different variety of tools for promotion and digital and social media and blogs and email. You name it, we have a wide range of services that we can provide to you as part of the collection, just that you can just use as is, and it also allows for some light customization on your part, so you don't spend a lot of time personalizing them and then getting them right out to your community. So, we're pretty good at that, and we have a number of onboarding capabilities for you as well, including some professionals that can help you with some best practices as well, if this is something new for you. In the end, it's all about providing the best value that we can provide to you to increase the number of exposures to your students and the usage, the access to the material just simply works in the apps, and then all that in the end helps drive down and has the best bang for those educational dollars that you want to use wisely and maximize the benefits from it. It's the classic cost per circulation help that we can provide in these kinds of unlimited settings. So in summary, this is one of the last slides here. It just provides you the best of both worlds. I think that we've gone through materials that expose you to the idea that we are a global leader in this technology. We understand how the trend has moved over time. The content breadth and depth is unparalleled. We can provide that unlimited experience to kind of satisfy that problem that you want to provide something, but you can't affordably provide it, or there's a friction or difficulty that the students can't find the material or get access to it when they need it, to a service that works and that we're here to support you. To all that together comes together, that it just has a total package that we would work with you on to make sure it works best for your institution. So at this point, before we take some questions, Leah is going to post a short poll for you, and then when that is done, she's going to jury some of the questions that have come in over in the QA section, and I'll do my best to answer them for you. So Leah, you can do the poll.
All right, everybody. I just put up a poll now. Just let us know if you'd like to learn more about RB Digital Higher Education Collection, and somebody can reach out to you with more information about that. So I will leave that up for just a few moments. If you have questions, please use this time also, after you've answered the poll question, to put them in using that Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. We'll get through as many questions as we can, and those that we don't get to answer in person live today, we'll follow up and try to reach out separately about those. So just a few more minutes on the poll here. Thanks everybody that's answering there. And then we will get to some questions. So, Brad, the first question I've got for you, how are you recording math and science books?
The way that the audio books are typically recorded, they are narrated by the professional narrator, and they narrate the print part of the book. So like if the question is about math and science books, you're probably also talking about the graphics, pictures, mathematical graphs and things like that. It depends on the material, but typically they talk about what the material does, and if the professor or the author of the particular book typically is explaining the material. The audiobook, because it's audio, doesn't have the graph or the picture or something built into it. So it's just the narrated, unabridged text that would be in that particular material.
Okay, thank you very much. So let's see here. The next question, let's see. Well, I'm getting a couple of hands raised. How do I see the poll? It should be showing on your screen. I'm seeing it on mine, and it should be there for you. If not, you can just send us a note in the attendee chat that says, yes, I'd like to hear more. Just send it to all panelists, and we'll take care of it that way. So I'm going to go ahead and close the poll now. And you can just send us a note to let us know if you'd like to hear more about the RB Digital Higher Education Collection. So the second question I have from, let's see here, is, well, I'm losing it here. Hold on just a moment. My chat's gone away.
I can see the questions too, Leah, too. So there's one that's interesting. It's related to the recording math one. If you look for the other ones, it's about the page numbering system of audiobooks.
Yes, sorry, thank you. How does a student cite from an audiobook? Right, are there page numbers to find passages and quotes?
Mm-hmm. There aren't the page numbers specifically in the traditional sense, because it's narrated. They don't say like, okay, page 2, and then they read it out. It's the narration of the text in just a flow. But what it does do very specifically every single time is that the books are mastered in order of the chapter of the particular item. So depending on the citation rules, they could reference that they've got the book and that where it came from, chapter, and then they would know the chapter that it's coming from And since it's an audiobook, it would have to be, a little stretch from rather than saying like page 3 and then having list, they would have the, that is from chapter 3, and it could tell you the minute and second mark of that particular chapter. Because it's, again, unabridged, follows the chapters.
Thank you. Next question. Is the collection rotated or weeded? Will a book be in the collection one year and removed the next? Can a library curate their own collection? So sort of a collection of questions there for you. Let me know if I need to go back through that.
No, I got that.
Okay.
So it's about content curation and then how things change over time. Once a book goes into one of the collections that you would add on, and there are a few sizes, I referenced the big one in the deck, the presentation side, the 15,000 plus sized one. Once the books go in, they stay in. As long as that there is the book rights to be able to operate in that kind of format, it stays in there. And so it's always a net additive to it. If a book goes out of print and we're not able to offer it anymore, then that's what happens. But that's rare since we own the books. It's very rare that it happens. Our core collections are a pre-curated collection of a wide sweep of all that material that I mentioned before, all those 30 categories, 15,000 plus books. You just get it all. There aren't subcategories within. You get all the books for a very value-based price. If you want to get individual titles or curate it one by one or genre by genre, that is different, and that would just be a traditional purchase of those audiobooks, and that would be like a transactional book, like buying a textbook for your shelves in the bookstore. You buy 10 copies, 10 students could check the book out. The collections are all encompassing and they're unlimited access.
Great. Thank you. Next question. Are children's audiobooks included in the collection?
That's a separate collection. That's a good question. When we were building these curriculum collections, there was questions about the breadth that's included when we did our surveys and research and all that kind of stuff. And the resounding response was typical adult books in these core collections. But we also know that we're one of the largest publishers of children's, young adult materials. So like for education departments, training our teachers for tomorrow kind of thing. It's a standard thing to offer, and we have a separate curriculum package for that covers that juvenile reading material. Mm-hmm. And it's all unlimited as well, and there's different size levels based on what the application of that particular class would be or that department would be, like for elementary school, middle school, high school, etc.
Got it. Thank you. For a large class, something like over 200 students in one online class, would I need multiple user access for 200 students, or I would need multiple user access for 200 students? Would that work in this instance?
Yes. So what it would be is that you would have for your institution, you would have a site license based on a size of your student base, traditionally called FTE, now more fancily called student enrollment. And then whenever that is, those individual students have a very private, secure account just that they have access to, and they access the information. It's all unlimited within the collections, obviously. Would be available to them. So that if you assign like Pride and Prejudice or one of those economic theory books that I referenced in my deck, in that type of setting, all 200 plus students would be able to check it out and have their own access to that book with their own data privacy account.
Okay, wonderful. Well, thank you very much. I think that we have come to the end of our questions here. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for presenting. And if there's any questions, there's a phone number and an email address there where you can reach out for more information, or you can type meeting requested in that questions box again, and someone will reach out and get in touch with you very shortly. Thanks, everyone. The recording will be available on the Charleston Conference website shortly, and you'll receive an email when that's available. Have a great day, everybody.
Thank you, everybody.